What's going on, guys? This is John Zakari, and I just recently beat Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. This is actually a look at my Link towards the end of the game, rocking that sick ancient armor set. And I wanted to talk about my thoughts after experiencing a fair amount of what this game has to offer. Sure, there's more shrines to track down and beat, as well as some side quests I left unfinished. But now I feel pretty comfortable giving a more critical review of this title. Still, as I've stated in my previous videos on the game, I think it's amazing and was worth the ridiculously long wait Nintendo dragged us fans through to get to this point. But I do have some more criticisms after beating it. Yeah, for those of you who felt my original video was a bit too fangirl, at least for me as someone who is often considered a bit of a harsher critic, then this one's for you. To others, you might find this a bit on the negative side, as I already gushed about how much I liked it. And if you disagree, there's always the comments section to go crying and name call. I always get a kick out of the desperate fanboys, so go nuts. But I feel like with all the high praise this game is getting, people seem, honestly, I think a lot of people are scared to throw much criticism at it. It's almost perfect, but sorry guys, almost means there are some issues. So let's get into them. First, I'd like to readdress the point I made in my original video, as it still stands about the inconsistent frame rate, particularly while the system is docked, as some of the areas like deep in the Lost Woods for instance, slow this thing down almost to a crawl. The game's beautiful in my opinion, but not when it randomly drops FPS. Still seems odd that it runs so much smoother when the system is undocked. Granted, I understand it's running a lower resolution, but maybe this is still something that can be patched. While I thought the shrines were amazing, bite-sized ways to push you to exploring the world, navigating the divine beasts, essentially this game's version of dungeons, fell kind of flat for me. I will say the opening instances where you have to disable them were pretty epic and varied. But once you go inside, things went a bit downhill for me. Aesthetically, they were all pretty much the same looking. I mean, you could give me a random screenshot inside any of them and I couldn't tell you which one you were in. And the puzzle solving was largely the same as well. Now, you often had to use different tools, and there was certainly some brain scratching that went on in here. But each one of the beasts used the same rotate mechanic, where you adjust the machine's positioning to gain access to different areas. And while I thought it was cool the first time, and even the second time, I was kind of over it by the third. They also feel pretty short compared to past Zelda dungeons, especially once you get a hang of this rotate mechanic. I mean, the shortest one, or at least the one I felt was the easiest, the bird one, for those of you who have played it, I'd say I was done with the whole thing in about 15 to 20 minutes, which again, comparing that to my first run of pretty much any past Zelda dungeon, is extremely short. And then there's the boss battles within them. Similar to the beasts' interiors, I really couldn't tell them apart in a lineup. Now the fights themselves get pretty intense. Most were damn tough. I just wish we could have gotten some diversity in the look of these guys to make them feel more impactful and original. It's actually kind of funny looking back at the Divine Beasts, because I see most people criticizing that there should have been more of them, but I think 4 was a good number. In fact, I may have actually preferred less, 3 maybe. The smaller number keeps these problems I've mentioned from getting out of hand. I mean, if you had to do, say, 7 or 8 of these, I think it would get way too monotonous, as I feel these are one of the weaker sides of the game and don't stand up when you compare them to past Zelda dungeons. And I understand they probably weren't necessarily intended to be the same as past Zelda dungeons, but that is the best thing you can compare them to, and I just don't think they stack up well. You can tell more time and effort clearly went into flushing out the beautiful open world that you can get lost in for hours, completing random quests, and even fighting random boss characters that you encounter in the world. Your time is better spent there than running around these beasts, so I'm glad the overall game design keeps you there more. I mean, I feel like in past Zelda games, I'm kind of rushing to experience the next dungeon, but in this one, it was kind of the opposite. When I was in these divine beasts, I really just couldn't wait to get through with them so I could get back to exploring the world. And since I'm talking about the divine beasts, I'd like to talk a bit about what is essentially the endgame area, of course Hyrule Castle, again trying to stay as spoiler-free as possible. Hyrule Castle to me was fantastic in all aspects, not just in terms of a Zelda-type area, but how one could be designed with the Breath of the Wild gameplay in mind. The place is just jam-packed with different areas, from dungeons in the deepest depths of the castle to the once lavish dining rooms and even living quarters on the upper levels of the structure. There's mini-boss-esque enemies strewn throughout that you can get locked in rooms with, not to mention guardian defenses strategically placed almost everywhere that make exploring the place extremely nerve-wracking. And what makes it so perfect for Breath of the Wild gameplay is you can really start anywhere. The whole place can be climbed, and there are seemingly dozens of entry points. When discussing it with my friends who have made it there, no one has gone through this place the same way. And I also think it's great that if you're brave enough, you can go in there pretty early on. Yeah, everything can kill you probably instantly, but the rewards are great if you can, say, rush in, grab some weapons and armor, and escape. It can give you a huge advantage in the earlier parts of the game. And I want to touch on the final fight with Ganon. Again, no spoilers, not even going to show any of the fight. It was good, definitely not my favorite, probably, unfortunately, in my opinion. I had recently played through Twilight Princess HD, which has my favorite, and in terms of epicness, I think the greatest encounter with Ganon. But this one was still pretty grandiose. My only real issue with it was the difficulty. I thought it was too easy, at least in comparison with the rest of the game. This title has been considered by many to be one of the most brutal Zelda games in terms of combat difficulty. Even the smaller enemies can give you trouble when they catch you off guard. But this was the only boss fight in the game, whether it be the ones I fought on the Divine Beasts or ones in the open world, that I beat on the first try. Sure, gearing had some role to play in that, but also there's this system in the game that makes the fight easier. Again, trying to stay free of spoilers, but to put it simply, completing more of the game makes the fight with Ganon easier, and I think it dials the fight down too much, in my opinion. Whether it be more phases, or having him hit a bit harder, I think Ganon should have felt more like a monumental threat in the end. Getting into some almost pure positives, I did like the combat changes. Almost every encounter feels dangerous, and the weapon breaking system keeps you on your toes while providing yet another reason to explore, as you're always on the lookout for strong weapons. And this truly makes the Master Sword feel legendary, as it cannot be broken, rather relying on a energy sort of system needing to be recharged. The gear upgrading also solid. While requiring a bit of grinding to increase your armor stats, you'll notice big improvements if you do. If you get an armor set to, say, max level, you'll find yourself walking all over the foes you once feared. I'd also like to touch on the story. I know this isn't really a series that people play for an enthralling narrative. I think the small amount of story you get in here was well done though. In the beginning, you're pretty much just dropped in the world with minimal info. Thankfully, no drawn-out intro or tutorial a la Skyward Sword. Rather, by exploring the world and interacting with the inhabitants, yet another reason to explore, you'll learn more. And the few cinematics you do get actually develop Zelda into quite an interesting character. If you track down the forgotten memories in this sort of side quest, which give you these cinematics, you'll be treated to a story of struggle, really, as Zelda tries to prove to all, but mostly herself, that she's more than just the princess. I liked it. And finally, I'll close after this, as it seems like this is actually going on a bit longer than I thought it would, but I'd like to discuss the music. And this is more of a suggestion rather than any criticism. The game's soundtrack is spectacular and all, totally on the level of past Zelda games, but there's not much of it, or at least you don't hear it much. And I get the audio for the game is intended to be more atmospheric, hearing wind blowing through the trees, waterfalls, and even like volcanoes and such erupting in the background. It works well enough, but I'd like to be able to have more to listen to, especially when I'm doing tedious things like hunting down the shrines I haven't hit yet. Now, I'm not saying the game needs more original score or anything like that. Actually, what I'd suggest is something like they did in Final Fantasy XV. If any of you have played that game, you know you can buy soundtracks from the past games at various shops and play them in your car as you cruise around the map. I think something like this would work great for Breath of the Wild, as the Zelda series has an awesome history of soundtracks, and I think it'd be cool to switch on something like the Gerudo Valley theme from Ocarina of Time as I ventured around the map. Just a thought. And with that, this video is a wrap. To reiterate, I do think this is an outstanding game, but as with anything, there's always room for improvement, and I acknowledge that some of these things may be a bit nitpicky, but it doesn't change the fact that they exist. Feel free to let me know your thoughts on the game in the comments. As always, I'm John Zakari, and thanks for watching.